Hello patrons and welcome to my scale making video. This is a great tutorial video I'm very proud of. I used my really nice camera to get some good close-ups, so come along and let's get into it. For these little scales that I'm making, I used an oil-based clay. And I just want to point out that that little pasta squisher right there was great in flattening out into even pieces. So I'm using a whole bunch of different sized fondant cookie cutters. These are like metal and plastic cutters that you can find at the craft store or like a baking shop. I have so many of them, I just keep collecting them. When I see a set of round ones, I'm just like, ooh, I need those. What I'm doing here is just looking for all the sizes that go up and down at an even rate, because I want to blend them down in size and have it look as natural as possible. So I just put together a little set here and all the sizes that I'm going to be using just to see what it looks like first. So after picking out the appropriate sized cutters, I then cut out about 50 pieces in all of the different sizes that I wanted, so I'd have enough to work with for the mold that I'm making. So very gently, one by one, I just pick up a scale and lay it down, following this line I marked on the table, and just ever so gently pressing them down, not squishing them. You don't have to heat them up and like really press them and get them to melt together, that's not necessary. Just one at a time, a little bit as you go up the line, and then I slowly I picked scales that were just a little bit bigger to gradually increase their size as I went up the line. So I made this mold before and I kind of gave you guys a sneak peek of its process, but I wanted to like make a round one for my other round scales and actually really go into depth on exactly how it was made. So this is to help me blend the scales on the ankles so that it is one fluid piece that just covers up the clamped seams that I have to cut out around the ankle part of the tail. Isopropyl alcohol helps smooth down any fingerprints or any unwanted texture, so I've just dipped a brush in that and I'm brushing it on. I pressed in the texture of some line work on these scales with a wooden tool called a rib tool. These are pottery tools that I've been using for years, and I still have them all, of course. It was really delicate work. You have to be very careful. A very light touch is needed here. I used Vaseline to get into any undercuts that might be there. I don't want the plaster that I'm going to be using to make the mold with to fill in underneath the scales at all, just to not obscure anything. The clay is much more malleable if you heat it up first, so you'll see me using a heat gun before I work with it. It's just easier to squish it into place. I'm making walls here for the plaster that I'm going to be pouring. I sprayed on a release agent called Ease Release 200. It helps the plaster release from the clay and the table. This stuff is pretty toxic though. I am wearing a gas mask. And now it is time to mix the plaster. So I use dental plaster, and the ratio for plaster to water is 10 to 7. So if you have 10 pounds of plaster, you want 7 pounds of water. I find that that's like the perfect mix. It even says it on the bag, this is what you want to do. So after I pour it, I pound on the table to vibrate the molds to release any bubbles that the plaster might have close to the model that I'm casting, and I'll go into what it actually looks like in more detail at the end of this video when we demold it and have a look at our model. So I finished this mold, and most of it's pretty good, except I am a little bit disappointed with it. The plaster had air bubbles in it, and the air bubbles filled in the really fine detail that I did with pressing in the lines. And at this point in my tail making career, I'm kind of disappointed with that, and I don't even want to use this. Like, I want to remake it, and I think I should. However, I'm thinking of remaking it out of resin instead of plaster. Air bubbles in plaster is a thing that happens quite often. You saw me pound the table to vibrate it to try to release most of those air bubbles. There weren't a lot like down here in the really fine scales, but where it masks the detail is up in the larger scales that are more visible, and I just don't like that. I did do a test here, and what happens is it looks like little bumps in the pressed details, and I just don't like it. So that's that mold. I think I'm gonna continue a little adventure into resin casting, and by continue I mean I haven't started it yet. I was looking into what resins to buy, and my silicone supplier also sells a lot of other casting materials, so there is like a 2-gallon set of casting resin that I could order in my next supply order, which I think I will do, because it would be nice to have some resin molds. They're more durable, they're less fragile, which means they're more durable, so it's the same thing, and they can last longer. There are other things you need to consider when casting resin, but when I get into it, I'll figure all that stuff out. Anyways, thank you for watching this little mold making video, and if you're trying this at home, good luck. If you're looking for plaster, make sure you pick a bag that has no water damage. I think that was what was wrong with my plaster batch, and that's why I'm getting so many air pockets. The bag itself was contaminated with water, which made it chunky, and you can actually see the chunks pouring out when I pour the plaster. So I should have looked at that, and I should have just gotten a fresh bag without any water damage, but I just wanted to use this bag up because otherwise it's useless. But I learned my lesson there. Anyways, Merlings, thank you for watching this, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!